Without further ado, I'm going to bring out Mr. Shake Shack himself and the editor-in-chief of Bon Appetit magazine, Adam Rapoport, and help me welcome them on stage.
All right. Hey, guys.
Good
Hello.
morning.
So we're in the Enormo Dome
Boy,
here.
we've outdrawn President Obama here. This is good.
Wow, these lights are bright. Thank you all for coming. So I'm Adam. That's Danny.
I'm Danny.
We're going to talk. I got notes. Somewhere I have my notes. I got my notes. All right, so our guest of honor here today, our bachelor number one, opened his first restaurant 31 years ago in a then dodgy, somewhat dodgy neighborhood of New York, and Union Square Cafe went on to become the most celebrated restaurant in Zagat history. Is that fair to say? You guys are like the number one favorite New York restaurant year after year.
We were for 6 years until Gramercy Tavern knocked Union Square Cafe off its pedestal.
So he opened a restaurant called Gramercy Tavern with a then young, skinny chef with a full head of hair named Tom Colicchio. That's how long that was ago.
Yeah, and a fantastic wait staff who also knew how to do flowers really well.
Yes.
You know anything about that?
That would be my wife. My now wife, although I didn't know her back then, but she worked for Danny. She still talks about it when she moved to New York. You opened in '94, that was Gramercy?
Uh-huh.
Has gone on the Modern at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Untitled at the
Museum of Modern Art.
A Museum of Modern
They're
Art.
very touchy about that.
Oh, I'm
Be
sure
careful.
they are. Maialino and Marta, two wonderful Italian restaurants. He started this little burger chain called Shake Shack. Might have heard of it. He literally wrote the book on hospitality called Setting the Table. And then he had to go cause a ruckus with this whole no tipping thing. Danny, come on. So if you're in the industry, you've probably heard about this. Danny instituted or is instituting a no tipping policy across all his restaurants in the coming year, and it's caused quite a ruckus within people who work in the industry, who write about food in restaurants. It's been a sort of hot button topic for the last several months. So let's rewind a little bit and talk tipping and service and hospitality. I remember when I was growing up, my father, very sort of equitable, fair-minded guy, it was 15% before tax, period.
And probably knowing your dad, which I don't, but I know his generation, it was also probably, and let's omit the wine, because I'm not going to tip on top of the wine, too.
Yeah, and 15 was like, that's if the waiter really busted his or her ass.
Right. And what if the waiter or waitress didn't?
Well, maybe she'll get 10%. So you grew up you're a nice Midwest boy from St. Louis. What was it like? Did you go to restaurants as a kid or as a teenager with your dad?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I went with my mom and dad all the time. And let's face it, what we were always, I was never taught from my family to use a tip to punish somebody. Mm-hmm. The only thing, and a lot of people were, by the way.
Yeah.
The tip, taking away their tip would be like taking away their gun. It would be that, it would literally be that big of an offense. But I was definitely brought up.
If you guys want to talk gun control, we can do that also.
I think those people are outside of the convention center right now, but we'll stay away from that topic. So, what I was brought up, though, was that you should use your tip positively for two reasons. Number one, because if you tip really, really well, you're going to get a better table next time, which is nonsense, but I was taught that. And then number two, if you use...
But that's true. If you slip the maitre d' 20, that will work.
If you slip the maitre d' 20 and bribe the maitre d', that's called greasing the palm.
Yeah, greasing the palm. That's different than tipping.
And it really works well if you're wearing a gold chain bracelet while you're at it. But the other thing I was taught was take care of these people because the restaurant's not paying them. And if you don't tip well, they're not going to be able to pay their rent. And that was that remains absolutely true.
So when you opened Union Square 31 years ago, what was tipping like back then? Was it 20? Because in New York City, and I realize that New York is somewhat different than a lot of cities in that there's a concentration of money and wealth and this and that, and it's like, at least now, like 20% is a given, and 20% on a big check is a lot of money. And was that the case 31 years ago?
No, 31 years ago, it was your dad's generation, and it was 15%. And then what happened over time, probably, let's say 25 years ago, New Yorkers said, I can't figure out 15%. Let's just
It's hard math.
Let's just double the tax. The
Yeah.
tax had gone up to 8.5%. So people knew how to double that. And so the tip automatically at that point became I can't even do the math right now, became 17%. And then something happened, and I have no idea when, but let's say 10 years ago, where people did 20%. And then the question started to come into play about wine. It started to become the norm where people said, wait a minute, why am I omitting the wine? Because a lot of restaurant checks back then would split your food total from your beverage total. And a lot of people were brought up to believe, I'm not going to tip on the beverage total because why should the server make more money because they pulled the cork on an $80 bottle of wine than the same server who pulled the cork on a $30 bottle of wine. It was no harder.
But I think that's it. Are there any big wine people out there? If you order, like, let's say you're ordering a $150 bottle of wine, will you tip on that? Do you factor that in across the board? You do. So like a $200 tab becomes a $350 tab just because they did that. That's always one I've been like, I guess so. If you have enough money to, I guess, buy a $150 wine, you have enough money to tip.
Well, let me just tell you where we are right now. So today in New York City, the average tip in New York is 21%. That sounds like a lot, right? But it became that because most people today tip on everything, and the fact
that they tip after tax.
And they tip after tax. So now they're tipping on a total that's actually I can't do math. It's terrible.
That's why you have a finance guy or gal.
Man, oh man, oh man. Yeah. Anyway, you get the idea.
And he's just a figurehead. He doesn't actually do anything in his restaurants. He shows up, shakes some hands.
Well, that's the problem with point of sale computers. Yeah. I don't really have to think about how it all got there. It just got there.
So my question is, now I had lunch with Danny the other day at Hillstone, the chain of restaurants, not chain, a collection of restaurants, Houston's and whatnot, that we both admire for their service. And they're one of those restaurants, like a lot of restaurants now, at the bottom of the check, you'll see like 15%, and they'll do the math for you. 20%, they'll do the math for you. 25%, and they'll do the math for you, which I love. And I'm like, because there are times when I've been out, I've had maybe a cocktail or three, and then you're trying to do the math, and you're sitting there, and you're like, oh man, wait, what? And you're adding, and next thing you know, your wife looks at it, and she's like, honey, what are you doing? So the restaurants do the math for you. You pay your bill, everything's great, right? So why mess with it? Doesn't it all work?
No, it totally doesn't work.
It does. Everyone, the 20%, it's like, hey,
but this topic is not about doing math, obviously, or you would have picked someone else to be sitting next to you.
I'm sitting here with my branded Bud Light can. Have you guys checked out these South by Southwest Bud Light cans? Oh, there you go. You got some. Danny's Budweiser originally from St. Louis, right?
That's right.
Still, they're now owned by Bev, whatever. Or
Belgian company. Yeah, so you've now earned your sponsorship. Yeah, Let's get back to talking about tipping right now.
Although I like the Bud Heavies, as the kids say. I like a regular Budweiser, but whatever, it's free. Anyway,
So no, this whole topic is something that I wanted to confront for a long, long time. Frankly, didn't have either the full courage to do it 21 years ago when I.
You're trying to run a successful restaurant business. That's hard enough.
Yeah, look,
take this on.
There's a lot of people whose lives this disrupts when you take this on, and I just got to give just a little bit of history to this whole thing. So I don't think a lot of people fully appreciate or understand how tipping came to be in this country, and I think it's an important, quick piece of history, which is that, it used to be, going back into the 1800s, that tipping was a European practice. And it was something amongst the very, very wealthy as a very nice thing to do for the help. Yeah. But on top of everything else, to kind of just show your appreciation.
Which in Europe, it still is that way in most countries. You just leave a little something.
You just leave a little something, but it's not instead of their regular income.
Yeah.
What happened in this country is that, and this is true history, right after the abolition of slavery, there were two industries, the restaurant industry and the Pullman car train industry, who came up with a workaround to having to pay their help, their service help. And they decided, you know what, rather than our paying them their wages, which you have to now that slavery is abolished, we're going to make that the responsibility of the customer to do that. And so just to give you a sense of history, all these years later, the adjusted minimum wage, I don't know if the folks in this audience know this, but there's an adjusted minimum wage, not the minimum wage that we see for every other industry in the world, but there's an adjusted minimum wage that applies to tipped employees. And our industry, I think this is done in the train industry, but our industry has been so successful for 150 years plus of making it clear that we are not going to be responsible for paying our servers. That's your job to do it. We're going to pay the adjusted minimum wage, which in something like 40 states in the United States as of today has gone all the way from $0 an hour right after slavery to $2.13 an hour. That's a lot. That's a whopping increase over all these years. In New York, where we do business, the adjusted minimum wage for tipped employees is $7.50. And meanwhile, we're hearing a whole movement to raise fast food workers' hourly wage to $15 an hour. So now imagine this just strange disconnect between the whole thing. And we're still relying upon you, the restaurant goer, to pay the living of our servers. Now, there's a whole lot of people who are so confused. There's a whole lot of people who are so angry about the notion that this might one day change. And there's a whole lot of people who are just threatened. And we've kicked every one of those beehives over the last few months.
Yeah, and like I said, it's a lot of people in the industry itself. I mean, what you would like to do is, and you've done it at the Modern so far, your restaurant at...
And the Modern is going well enough that we just introduced it at Maialino.
Okay, and
2 weeks
start
ago.
off in a 20% service hospitality fee on the bill, correct?
Mm-mm.
No, I already got that wrong.
So I'm sorry to I got to get some baseline information
sure.
out so that then...
I thought I did my homework. I read
No,
it.
no, no.
Yeah.
You're kind of right, but you're kind of not right.
I can't afford to go to the Modern. That's a problem, so I haven't been there in a while. Sorry, just messing with you.
Thanks.
Told you I wasn't going to take it easy.
Can I just understand why the host helped himself to a beer but didn't offer the guest one? I don't really understand that or appreciate it.
Danny wanted a Shiner Bock, but Shiner Bock's not the sponsor of South by, so it was there was a bit of a controversy.
I never said I wouldn't drink Budweiser. Okay. All right, so...
Get Danny a Bud Light.
No, it's really... It was just meant to loosen up the crowd a little bit, so...
All right, so what's built in?
Okay, so here's the deal. There are a huge number of restaurateurs who would actually love to eliminate tipping because the laws that surround tipping are different in every state. Now, what does that mean? That means that you can want to do the right thing as a restaurateur, and you can accidentally not do the right thing. Here's the right thing in New York State. You may not share tips, even though all tipped employees in probably 80% of all fine dining restaurants pool their tips, which means that...
But they can only pool it among other servers.
They can't
share with the kitchen.
They can't share with the kitchen or management. I kind of get it, but I kind of don't get it because the law says that if you don't spend at least 80% of your time face-to-face with a guest, you may not share in the tip pool. So that means that cooks can't share in the tip pool. A maitre d' cannot share in the tip pool. The barista can, but only if the barista's in the dining room and brings you your coffee. That's why you're starting to see that at a lot of restaurants. But the bottom line is that there are actually lawyers out there going, only spent 78% of the time. Let's sue the restaurant over that.
All right, well, let's talk about, what are you putting on we're customers. So if I go to the Modern, what additional charge am I getting, or built into the tip, the check?
All right. So now, what a lot of restaurants started to do, and I'm going to guess this actually goes back to Chez Panisse in the 1980s, and in New York City we saw this at Per Se probably about 15 years ago or so, and then for the last 5 years, some mom and pop or smaller hip restaurants started to say, your chicken, let's take chicken for an example. $25, but what we don't want to do is to make that chicken $30 because as soon as it says $30 on the menu, we may price ourselves out of a competitive edge with all of our other restaurant neighbors, et cetera. So we want to keep that price $25. So what these restaurants did was they would keep their menu prices the same, and they would add a mandatory service charge at the end. Then they started getting in trouble. Some of the restaurants today are adding what's called an admin fee at the bottom.
Yeah.
The point being that somehow an admin fee got them out of trouble calling it a service charge.
And you're just building those into the prices.
We're just saying the price you see
that's it. That
is
covers
the price
everything.
you see.
All right, so then you originally, with Modern, it was basically about 20% increase with prices. But what's interesting here, that would essentially give the waiters still the same amount, or waiters and waitstaff and busboys, about the same amount of money they were making on a nightly, daily basis. However, one of your goals is to increase pay for line cooks. Now, and as you know, I'm not good at math, but the only way you can increase pay for line cooks in addition to the waiters is either you're taking some of that money from what the waiters were making and giving to the line cooks, or you're charging the customers more, not just 20%, but as you've mentioned, can we go to 30 or 35? Build that into the price of the roast chicken. There you go.
Ask and you shall receive.
Let's see.
Does anybody want one? We got some up here. Seriously, if you want one, come on down. Here we go. I got my mic over there.
Hey, Kale.
Oh wow, we don't have that many. Gosh, all right, there you go. We got one more. We got two more. All right, wait, you. All right, we got one more. Here
Anybody
you go.
want mine?
There you go. No, you're having that one. So, yeah, the only way the line cooks make more money and that there's a fair work environment is if the customer ends up paying more money to support them.
All right, let's talk math. Let's talk how this works. So
We went and I want to talk math, but yeah.
but you have to, because what you're pointing out right now is that there are some voodoo economics at work with this whole thing. Because the true
That was a presidential campaign reference from back when you were opening Union Square Cafe.
very young man.
Yeah.
That's right. So here's the deal. You're absolutely right. The ultimate reason that we finally pulled the cord and said, let's do this, is that for the past 3 years or so, it has been nearly impossible to fully staff the kitchens of our restaurants. We've got really good restaurants. There's all these people who are paying, $30,000 to go to culinary school. And meanwhile, you don't have to take that education like you used to and start your career in New York City, in Manhattan.
So if I'm applying for a job as an entry-level line cook, I just graduated from ICE or wherever, I'm 23 years old, what's my starting hourly wage at the Modern?
At the Modern, it was $10,
Yeah.
$10 or
I just
$11.
paid however many $30,000
It's
a year.
absolutely crazy. And by the way, that $10 or $11 has come all the way up from $9 or $10 when I started Union Square Cafe. Completely ridiculous. Meanwhile, during that exact same 30-year period, a server who qualifies for tips has found that their income has gone up from about $100 a night to close to $300 a night.
Yeah.
Why? Because
You're walking out with a wad of cash. And
or most people use it on the credit card, but you're getting it on your compensation one way or another. And the reason is that, what is a tip? It's a commission. It's a multiplier. It's not really what it used to be thought of, tip, to ensure promptness. It's a commission, and it's a multiplier. The multiplier itself has gone up from 15 to 21%, and it's multiplying menu prices that have gone up probably 200%, over the past 30 years, while the cook has stayed.
Okay, so then how do we pay the cook?
How do we?
Because I think if you appreciate good restaurants and you appreciate good food, as customers, yes, you want to take care of the cook. You want to, yes, sort of compensate the people who are making this good food for you. But if an entree is already $37, and then am I going to be now paying $42? I mean, that gets to be a lot.
You got to bear with me for a second.
I got to press you, man. Cause trouble.
Yeah.
The Bud Light talking.
I think I'm going to get rid of this because I know why he wanted to serve that to me right now. So look, you're me. You're a restaurateur. And you've got, I think, pretty good restaurants, great chefs, and you can't hire enough cooks because they can't afford to be a cook.
Or if you were making $10 an hour and working at the Modern, you are living so far away from West 53rd Street, you're living way the heck out in Queens. You can't
guess
close to afford
guess
to
what
live
just happened way out in Queens? A really good restaurant opened, and you go to yourself, I don't need to have a Manhattan restaurant on my resume anymore. I'm going to work right next door to home where I can afford to live.
And it's not
or
an
in
hour and a half
Brooklyn.
commute at 11 p.m. when you're trying to get
Every
to
city in
the
this
train.
country. You used to have to work in New York before getting a chef gig in Cincinnati or Minneapolis. You can just go right there.
I mean, we talk about a lot about the restaurant in the magazine. It's amazing, like Minneapolis, Gavin Kaysen, who was the chef at Cafe Blue in New York, he was like, you know what? I'm just going to move back home to Minneapolis and open up a nationally acclaimed restaurant there.
And have a great standard of living and make a lot of people happy and be a great star. So look, I wake up one day and I'm going, how is it for the first time in my career at our restaurant, North End Grill, we have more.
That's right by the World Trade Center where we work, and I go there a lot for lunch, and it's a wonderful restaurant.
Thank you. And how would you be surprised to find out that we have more CIA, Culinary Institute grads working in our dining room than we have in our kitchen, because they cannot afford to be a cook.
And they've got to pay off their student loans.
So what do you do if you're me? So you go, we got to change the system, because I cannot legally share tips with the cooks in the kitchen. If I simply raise the cooks' salaries or their hourly rate, which I'd love to do, what does that do? That means we raise our menu prices. As soon as we raise our menu prices, the multiplier, also known as the tip, means that the discrepancy and the disparity between what a waiter makes and what a cook makes only gets bigger. And as a result, you, the restaurant patron, are now going to pay twice as much, because you're going to be paying higher menu prices to cover what I paid my cooks, and you're going to be paying a higher tip. And the fact is that emotionally, I've figured this out after all these years, we have trained an entire restaurant going public to believe that the menu price is the whole thing. It's not, because people think that the tip comes out of a different pocket. And even though when they get their credit card bill at the end of the month, there's one big price, they somehow think that what they saw on the menu, when they went to the...
Perception is reality.
Perception is reality.
Like, oh.
So here's what we did. We said, this has to change, because we cannot run great restaurants if we can't get good cooks. The first thing we did was we said, we're going to raise our cooks' hourly rate by $2 an hour and give a much higher rate that they can earn up to before they become a sous chef, before they become a chef, which, by the way, pays really well. Now, that's going to cost us some money to do that.
Okay, but some people in the industry, and I've spoken to some people, except there's a lot of people on different sides of this, say, well, why can't just Danny and his investors, why can't it come out of their pocket? Why does it have to come out of the customers?
Because I won't have investors, because already our margins are thin enough.
Give us an idea of a restaurant margin at a successful restaurant.
Well, a really, really successful full service, I'm not talking about fine casual, but a full service restaurant we would love it if we could make 10%.
So you're like 7%, 8%?
On a good month, that's where we are.
So it's pretty tight.
Yeah, because rents are going up like crazy. Let me
put you on the spot. Danny just moved Union Square Cafe from the original location because they were going to, I'm sure, double your lease or something, triple your lease. New York City is insane. After a 15-year lease, typically in New York?
We had we had a 14 and then a
16.
16.
Yeah. Again, ballpark figure. So you moved about 10 blocks north on Park Avenue South.
I only moved 3 blocks.
It's only 3 blocks. All right.
It will be once we get it open. Yes, that math I know.
Give us an idea of what are you paying per month rent at a space like that?
I don't know. I honestly.
Ballpark. Is it like 60 grand a month?
Let me put it to you this way.
Am I way low on 60 grand a month, or?
No, you're not. You're not way low, but. Yeah. I'm not going to tell you what our rent's going to be.
But it's somewhere in that ballpark.
I'll tell you that it was $8 a square foot in 1985. The asking rent for the Union Square Cafe space was, I believe, close to $200 a square foot or more.
That's crazy.
And so where does that come from? That just makes your margins go like that.
So when you decided to, like, all right, let's try to get a fairer, more balanced pay system for all our employees, you go to your investors, you tell them that, they're like, wait, man, everything's great. We're killing it at Myelino. We're killing it at Gramercy. Like, why? You're not a publicly traded company. Shake Shack is, Union Square Hospitality is not. Did you have to sell them on it, or did you just say, hey, I'm doing this?
No, we had to sell all of our stakeholders. Obviously, the first and most important stakeholder is our staff. Mm-hmm. And if you come to one of our restaurants and you don't get and you get the perception that our staff members do not like this, you're not going to like coming to our restaurants.
No.
So the very, very first and most important stakeholder that this has to work for are the now formally tipped employees. And so this notion that everybody's trying to figure out, and I still have not fully answered your question, which is, how do you do the math? Look, we were losing cooks. If somebody waived an hourly rate that was 25 cents an hour higher than what we were paying, even if the cook loved the chef in the restaurant, they would jump ship, because that adds up, especially with overtime, to the thing that may allow them to finally pay their rent. So we said, we're going to break that. We're going to be so much higher than what typically restaurants pay their cooks that we're going to end up getting cooks. So take the Modern, for example. We were 14 cooks down. Now that's a kitchen team of 60 people, 60 people, to run the Modern for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We now have a backlog of 150 cooks who want to work there. And that makes the chef happy. Okay, so now we're paying our cooks more money. Yeah. My investors say, you better not charge the customers so much more that you lose your customer base.
So what is your percentage built in right now?
Now, hold on. And my waiters and bartenders justifiably go, we love this idea. We love the idea of eliminating tipping, and I'll explain why in a second, but it can't put us in a negative.
They don't want to be at their expense.
It can't be at a negative financial position.
Yeah.
So now we go, our cooks are going to make 20% more. Our waiters are going to be whole, or when you come, they're going to be moping around and not happy, and then you won't come to the restaurant. But guess who else? You're going to mope if I raise the prices too much. So how do we make it all work? The only way we can make it work is if you believe, as I do, and this is what we had to convince our investors, that if you do the right thing, you actually end up being more profitable, and here's why. We all know that when you have excessive turnover in any business, whether it's a sales business or a restaurant business, quality and consistency go down, and your number of repeat customers goes down.
You have a happier work staff, you have a happier customer.
Far less
you get
turnover.
more people come spend money. But the question is, you sign on, the waiters, they eventually sign on, the cooks, of course, they're going to sign on, but you need the customer to sign on. And so in a few months you've been doing this at the Modern. And the Modern, if you've ever been or never been, there's a formal dining room in the back in this beautiful modern museum of modern art space. And then there's a more, what do you call it, the bar room or cafe, smaller tables, but different menu, not prefix. What has worked as you expected, and what hasn't? What adjustments have you had to make that you're like, let's tweak this? So pros and cons since you've started.
Well, and again, you look at all of your stakeholders. So we have, I don't think, ever communicated more transparently with our staff than we have through this. And I don't just mean at the Modern, but when we announced that we were going to begin this at the Modern in November, we also announced that we would be rolling this out at every single one of our restaurants by the end of 2016. So we have had more opportunity to go face to face, take really tough questions from our staff. Here's why we're doing it. Everybody on the staff who believes this can work is challenged and charged with helping us to find tweaks to make it better.
So name some, yes. Name a few things you've adjusted that you, like I said, thought might work, then didn't, and you've pivoted to sort of make them
work. All right, so one of the things that we heard right off the bat led us to how we're doing this. So how does the math work if you're a server? So instead of paying $7.50 an hour, which is the adjusted tipped minimum wage, we pay $9 an hour to start with. Why does that matter? Well, if you get a hurricane or a terrible snowstorm or whatever it happens to be, and you don't have enough customers, at least the hourly wage was a little bit higher. So they wanted that. They liked that. They also told us, we actually like being commissioned salespeople. So is there a way that we can retain the incentive to sell? Because it actually feels good. So we said, sure. That led us to a mathematical equation where we actually share 13.5% of the revenue of the restaurant's top line revenue every single shift.
This question I had, and I was reading about that. Eater did a great piece with you when this first started happening. Ryan Sutton wrote, if you want to go online and search for it, a very comprehensive breakdown of how this might work. And in that, you mentioned in your team that there being transparency. And do you actually share weekly top-line revenue with the staff and let them know? So if I was a waiter there, I would know exactly how much revenue the Modern brought in.
You would know that. And here was the next idea they came up with. This was my favorite.
And I know theoretically what my take should be of that top-line revenue.
Exactly right. And that top-line revenue share is going to also be a function of how many hours you worked, okay, and how many shifts, but not which shifts. Ladies and gentlemen, this was probably the best idea that we got from our staff. I wish I had thought about this idea. One of the things that the servers told us they wanted us to disrupt and just get rid of altogether was the notion that the only way as a tipped employee that you can make more money, because unlike every other business I know of, every waiter makes the exact same hourly wage, right? That in New York, $7.50 an hour. Doesn't matter if you're good, bad. Doesn't matter if you've been there for 15 years or 5 weeks. You're making the exact same hourly wage. And they said, so the only way that we can make more money as we get more senior and more experience is to work basically Thursday, Friday, Saturday night shifts. It's the only way we can make more money. And a couple people are moms or they're dads or they're single, and they say, I can't.
You basically just mentioned your entire wait staff there.
Yeah, I can't even put my kids to bed at night. I can't be with my kids on the weekends in order to make enough money. And they were the ones that suggested, let's do this 13.5% revenue share on a weekly basis, not on a per shift basis. So they know, so what that means is that, and it's good for customers as well, because in a typical restaurant, the least experienced or least excellent servers are working on Monday lunch or Monday dinner.
And that sucks.
Or in the case of Maialino, breakfast.
That's different between me ordering a vodka soda and me just ordering a club soda.
That's right. That's right.
That's a big difference. So you had mentioned about getting
But do you understand what I'm saying? Which is that now if I'm a server and I'm a great server, I can get a higher hourly wage because it doesn't have to be $9. We can raise that anytime we want to. And then furthermore, I don't have to only work Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights. I can work Monday lunch.
Share this.
I still get my percentage.
But, all right, so then you had also mentioned in terms of, in one quote, that you could be a waiter, you've had 3 weeks of experience, you could be out there on a Friday night killing it, making more or as much money as the waiter who's been there for 10 years. And that you said you would like for there to be some sort of merit sort of compensation, that you could decide, hey, you know what, you've been a loyal customer, you've been kicking butt for all these years, just like we do at a magazine. People who've been there for a lot longer get paid more than someone who just started yesterday. Have you been able to do that? And if so, how do you personally control, can you decide that this waiter should get more based on his or her merit?
So have we done it yet? No, because this is so new. Can we do it? Will we do it? Absolutely. Our chefs do that with our cooks.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're a sous chef and you've been there for 5 years, you're making more than the guy who started yesterday.
And I don't have any compunction in arguing that a general manager is in a much better position to know if a server deserves a merit raise and therefore a promotion than 100 different guests would be via a tip, which is not going to impact that server anyway, because the server is going to share that $50 tip with 35 other people in the restaurant.
One Andrew Knowlton, our deputy editor, who's somewhere around here in the crowd, connected me with a friend of his who's a bar manager at a couple of very successful Brooklyn restaurants. And this said bar manager was not a Danny Meyer supporter. And one thing he said, which I thought was interesting, and this is more of a, I don't want to say Danny Meyer, he respects you very much, but he's got some issues with this change, is that, and this is something you hear from people who are kind of been in the industry for a while, that he said there's something about whether you're a bartender or a waiter, that a lot of it is about the hustle. There's an adrenalizing factor of being out there, working it, and scoring the good tip, and what incentivizes you, it what sort of gives you your juice every night. And then to lose that, he feels that's going to sort of take the air out of the room, that people are not going to be as good at their job as they might be otherwise because they don't have to be. Do you buy that at all? And can you at least understand that moment when you're a young kid working at a New York City restaurant?
Yeah, sure I do.
You're feeding off that.
I mean, I was a commissioned salesman for the first 3 years I lived in New York, and I love that. But I just want to go back to what I said, which is that's what our servers told us. They're not being nice to you because they expect to get a big tip. They would have been nice to you anyway. They don't know who you are, and they're not going to get. They're nice people. But that doesn't mean they don't like that ding, ding, ding that comes. And they get that because, and they said, please keep the incentive to sell.
Yeah.
And so if they sell more, if they sell a bigger bottle of wine, 13.5% times a bigger bottle of wine. The other thing they asked us to think about, and we are thinking about this right now, is to do something that that provides an opportunity for them to make even more money if the rating of the restaurant goes up.
That's interesting.
Okay.
Rating according to whom?
So that's a good question. So right now, until we get some kind of an app, and if anyone out in this audience is that person who's got that
There's
app,
not a lot of tech people here this weekend, sorry.
yeah, I guess not. But you guys have all driven in cars like Uber or Lyft or whatever. And at the end of that experience, you have an opportunity, if you want to fill in 0 through 5 stars. When you eat at the Modern, when you eat at Myelino, you will get a card that gives you an opportunity to fill in 0 through 5 stars. And that's one way, but then there's a program that we have that pulls from every social media outlet out there, probably the most powerful one being OpenTable, because people who use OpenTable also rate restaurants. But when the rating of a restaurant goes up, our servers and our bartenders want us perhaps to take that 13.5% and make it a little bit higher so that they can retain the incentive not only to sell more, but to please more. They really want that.
What complaints, and there must be complaints because that's what customers do, we complain. What complaints have you gotten at the Modern that maybe you think were valid complaints? Have there been any?
Here's what no one's complained about. Yeah. No one's ever complained about not having to fish through their pocketbook for $3 to buy their coat back.
Yeah.
Everybody loves.
I hate that. So what have you done?
Everyone
that drives
hates
me
that.
crazy. And then you have like a 20, and you're like, that's more than I want to tip for my coat.
Yeah, and I don't want to be a cheapskate.
And you're like, $1, I feel like a lame-o giving this person
right.
$1.
And you don't want to say, can I please have $15 back or whatever.
Then you feel like a putz.
So that's just gone. There's no more tipping. The code checkers love actually saying, done. That was included in your price. The only real complaint that we've gotten have been from people who are kind of my age and older, who are actually angry. And like I said earlier, about 20% of them are people who are like, how dare you take away my opportunity to punish your waiters for bad service? And it's kind of like, I don't really miss those customers, honestly, if they're never going to come back.
But listen,
hold on now, because the other 80%, it's kind of a legitimate thing, and I empathize with them, and they feel like they're going, do you realize how hard this is for me not to be able to leave a big tip as a way to say thank you?
Yeah.
And what our servers have told us, and our guests is, do you realize how good it is when you just look me in the eye and say thank you? I really appreciated your service. Do you realize how good that feels? And it actually is demeaning for a lot of servers to feel like they were just kind of, that you thought I was only being nice to you because of the tip.
All right, so I know certain New York types that no matter what you tell them, they're still going to pull out the roll of cash. Do people leave cash on the table even though you tell them not to, or say you don't need to, and then if they do, what do the waiters do with that cash?
So we have no line on the check for gratuity. So if you're paying with a credit card, which probably 95% of people do, although at some point we'll be rolling this out, we have a bar called Porch Light, and that'll be really interesting because people are so used to putting that $5 bill on the bar. So our tips on credit cards are 0 at this point because there's just no way to do it.
But are people leaving cash on the table?
So we've gone from an average of about 21% tip at the Modern to something like 1.5%. So we are still getting 1.5% cash tips. And our servers have been instructed, if somebody does that, the first thing is for at least one time to just say, just want to remind you that hospitality is included, and that's completely not necessary. Thank you so much. If they insist on leaving it, we're not going to like throw it back at them. But then that $1 or $5 or $20 or whatever it happens to be legally goes into a pool
So
just
it
like
does
it
go into
used
the
to.
pool.
None of that goes to the cooks.
Yeah.
But that small amount goes to the wait staff and other eligible tipping
You mentioned the
employees.
bar, which I think bars are different, I think, than restaurants. And if you guys have ever been to a crowded bar before and you finally get up there, and it's nice at that first time you finally get the bartender's attention, you know, and you want to tip that bartender well that first time. Like you'll leave in a 10 or a 20, so you know that when you come back, that bartender will see you, and even though there's 5 people trying to get a drink, that bartender is going to get you first.
Yeah, they're going to say.
And I want to be able to do that still. Like that's, don't you? I mean, isn't that just good for everybody?
Yeah, well, what you want the bartender to take good care of you. It's not that you
Yes,
want it.
and I will give him or her money to do so.
And I have this radical proposition. What if the bartender would pay attention to you instead of saying, that's money, so that's who I'm going to pay attention, and that's not money, and so that's not who I'm going to pay attention to. And there's a huge amount of sexism and racism and other isms that go into who gets paid attention
But
to and who doesn't.
do you, when you set out to do this, and how many people have been to a Danny Meyer restaurant not counting Shake Shack? All right, wow. Way to go, Danny. Do you at least recognize that your restaurants are a little different? Like the service is at an extremely high level. Like you walk in, people smile at you, they say hello. It is your restaurants are, credit to you, a very welcoming place. But not all restaurants are like that, you know? And like it's a little bit easier for you who has this portfolio of successful restaurants with an established good service line. But there's a lot of pressure on other restaurants to do this now who don't do that.
Okay, cool question. I really appreciate that. Implicit in your question is the reason that we felt the obligation to lead on this. First of all, we're not the first restaurant or restaurant organization to eliminate tipping.
So I was talking to a waiter last night who used to work with Renee Erickson in Seattle, Whale Winds, Wallerson Carpenter, and she's been doing it all her restaurants.
Yeah. So I fully appreciate that, and we really deserve zero credit on this. It's just that we're the first restaurant group in a major media city to say we're committed to doing this everywhere. I will tell you in no uncertain terms that in our lifetimes, if you're someone who feels the need to work in a tipping restaurant, or if you're someone who feels the need to patronize a tipping restaurant, you will always have that opportunity. And this is not a mission that we have to believe that everybody else should do this. It's a mission that we had in the first place, that in order to save our business, I cannot have a business just because our team are hospitable and nice if you don't love the food. And so if we can't get the best cooks to want to work in our restaurants, you know, this is a house of cards that's going to fall in about 5 years. That's why we did it. We did it for us. The fact that many other restaurants are following suit right now is because they're making the same choice. And I need to just explain one other thing, that as the tipped minimum wage goes from $2.13 to $5 in some states, $6, $7, $7.50, that'll keep going higher. And if fast food workers are getting $15 an hour, you can bet at some point that the adjusted tipped minimum wage will probably fall by the wayside at some point anyway. And when that happens, all of the non-tipping restaurants out there are obviously going to have to raise their prices anyway to be able to pay for the additional labor cost, right? They're going to find that the disparity between what their cooks make and what their servers make is only going to grow dramatically. They're going to have a revolution on their hands. Their patrons are now going to pay a lot more money, and we will actually be in a competitively advantageous position because our prices include everything.
You've thought about this.
I have thought about this.
We're going to take some crowdsourced questions in a minute, but first, on the Bon Appetit Foodcast, I don't know if anyone ever listens to that. You can check it out on iTunes and whatever. We do a lightning round with our guests. So I'm going to hit you with some.
You just had a good one with Jonathan Gold.
Jonathan Gold, the restaurant critic for the LA Times, such an amazing writer and brilliant, smart guy.
And a great new movie that just came out, City of Gold. You should check it out.
A documentary on him by IFC. So we're going to hit you with a few lightning round questions. Either or, you got to answer. All right?
Either or. Let's see if I can do that math. All right.
Shack burger or Shack fried chicken sandwich?
Oh, boy. Today, chicken, because I ate so much barbecued beef yesterday.
he did the trail yesterday. Good answer.
The chicken sandwich is awesome.
All right, St. Louis question. As a St. Louis boy, Lou Brock or Bob Gibson?
You just picked my two childhood heroes, but here's the deal.
Yeah.
Bob Gibson has become a good friend.
Oh, wow.
He's an investor in Blue Smoke.
Is he really?
And I just got to go to his 80th birthday party. So
He seems like a tough mother. Yeah, I mean, really back in the day. He was a Hall of Fame pitcher for the Cardinals. If you're not a baseball fan,
and he has a great new book called Pitch by Pitch, which you should read.
All right, cool. A Gramercy question: tavern or dining room?
Tavern.
Tavern. If you're ever in New York, go have lunch at the tavern, at the Gramercy Tavern. You walk in, and do you still have the soup and sandwich deal there? Best deal in New York City. Every day, half a sandwich, an amazing sandwich, bowls. It's great. What every soup and sandwich should be. Another Shaq question. Vanilla or chocolate?
It's a full sandwich.
Yeah.
Okay.
Full sandwich. Is it a full? Well, okay. I mean, oh, Jesus. Maybe I split it. I don't know. The deal even just got better. Another Shake Shack question. Vanilla or chocolate?
Coffee.
Coffee.
Yeah, the fair shake is the.
And so you do add a shot of espresso, or what do you do?
We add a shot of fair trade coffee, so it's called the fair shake, and the best combination wait till you try this, Shack fries with the coffee milkshake.
Doing the dip. Oh. The controversial Shack fries. He tried the new Coke thing by introducing new fries, and that was the one mistake Danny Meyer made in his career.
No, just the most public one.
The most public. A couple more. Cash or credit?
Credit.
Credit. Last question we always ask: butter or olive oil? Wow, I didn't think this would be that tough.
Both.
Both. Oh, come on. All right, we're taking questions now. Who's our tech person? Guy? Yes. So, well, there were gonna be questions on the screen. Where's my person? Yes? No? Anyone? Where's Sarah? We'll take questions from the crowd. There's some. We'll take some crowd questions, and there's some right there also. I have terrible eyes. All right. Can this be applied to all restaurants, or do you think your success is because your guests are not as sensitive to price? You have some moneyed guests. Your guests
are a
little higher end.
Great question, Rob. Guess where the inspiration to really have the courage to do this came from? It came from Shake Shack. Shake Shack has never had a tip jar. I can't stand that when I go to a fast casual or fine casual place. You feel like a cheapskate if I leave the 32 cents change.
The coffee place.
And I said to myself, if a place charging $6 for a burger can do this, why can't a place charging $60 check average do it? Yeah. We are testing this at every one of our restaurants. I don't think it has anything to do with price. Why? Because even though you have been conditioned, as I said, to think that the menu price is the whole deal, if you're a tipper of any type, you're paying that menu price plus your tip. And when you get your credit card at the end of the month, our goal is that it's the exact same thing.
All right, who has an audience question? Yes, right there. Yell loud.
How do you think about tipping in non-service-based industries? So I walk into Juice Press and I pull a $12 juice out of the fridge and I pay with a credit card or I pay with Level Up, and they ask me, do I want to tip?
I hate that. Personally, yeah. What do you think?
I think it's a complete scam.
Yeah. Good
and the problem with that is, no, it's using guilt to make you do something that is completely ridiculous. Yeah. If they wanted to pay that guy more,
Jewish guys are guilty enough.
If they wanted to pay that guy more, they should just pay him more. But they shouldn't make you feel bad about it.
Who's got a question? You with the red hair. Sorry, I can see your red hair. Or maybe it's more of a fuchsia. Yeah.
But by you saying tipping really isn't factored into this, I'm more than my money, so it takes away sexism, it takes away racism, and it says really we're all created equal. And taking a stand in that in a very public setting, something that I am a cook, I am a restaurateur, I am a small business owner, but I also go eat out all of the time. So it's affecting me personally on all of these levels. And it continues to hit out in all of those individual realms that I think will also spread in tech industries and in
awesome. Not really a question, but a great point. All right, yes, right there in the front row.
So Uber has introduced like surge pricing that's basically like 100 or 200, 300% sort of extra charge. How do you think that factors in? Because you're saying customers are paying, 3x to drive to the restaurant. That's basically like a 300%, 200% tip. How does that factor into your sort of view on tipping?
I don't have any interest in surge pricing in the restaurant industry. As a matter of fact, this happens every single time there's an economic surge in our country. You start to see people who want to charge more to get primetime reservations in restaurants. And then when the economy takes a dip, those companies take a big hit. We never have signed up for any of those because that's ridiculous to charge you more money. I know restaurants actually in New York City that raise their champagne and wine prices on Valentine's Day because they can.
Don't ever go out and eat on Valentine's Day. Stay home and cook. Look at bonappetit.com for recipes. Why wouldn't bars raise their prices on Friday nights to control the crowd? Because they probably want more people in there.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
It's the law of many. And my whole philosophy on pricing is you can shear a sheep many times, but you can only skin him once.
Can you say that 5 times fast?
Yeah, I can, but I'm not going to because we don't have time. But what I was going to say is that if there's 5 major airlines out there, they can actually have their version of discretionary pricing based on the demand for that flight. All right? But there's 26,000 restaurants in New York City and probably 5,000 bars. And it's ridiculous for me to raise my prices on Friday nights just because it's Friday when you can go to 4,000 other bars.
All right, behind you, young lady. Miss, sorry. Hi.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to say thank you as well for bringing this conversation to the forefront. I own a hair salon with 25 hairdressers.
Hair salon with 25 hairdressers who work a lot.
Tip and commission. It's a flat commission. Hairdressers are not waged, nor legally do they have to be waged. And this is a conversation that I brought up to my investors 10 years ago and was shot down. And you have given me the courage to make it an imperative this year that we will do this in 2016.
Yeah.
For the respect that it brings to the industry and the way that it equalizes the playing field.
Yeah, she was just.
Our service is not how somebody tips us. But I wanted to ask about the conversation. The first time that you brought this subject to your team, there's nothing more intimidating as a leader than a fundamental cultural shift in how you do business. And so what ensured that conversation was successful for you?
Just if you didn't hear, she runs a hair salon where the stylists are commissioned and work on tips. She would like to do something similar so that fair pay. And the question is, that first conversation, what did you say? What was the one thing to say is that, guys, this is going to work and it's going to be good for you?
Thank you for your comment and your question, and I know that your industry is similar. And here's the thing, guys. There's no industry on earth that I'm aware of where tipping is the norm, where pride is as high as it could be. You don't tip your lawyer, you don't tip your airline pilot, your accountant. And it's industries where tipping is the norm, where unfortunately self-respect, unfortunately, is at the lowest. So here's what we did. We've had 8 or 9 town hall meetings open to everyone on our team. We've set up.
How many employees in New York City do you have?
We have 1,800 employees in New York City altogether. And we also set up.
Have it at Madison Square Garden?
No, the Museum of Modern Art gives us, they're so nice, they give us their theater, and we fill it for all these meetings. But we also set up an intranet where we guaranteed that every question, whether you wanted to ask it anonymously or with your name on it, would get answered, and that every question and every answer would be there for everybody. So first thing was transparency. And then I did the thing that probably everyone in this audience understands as well as I do, which is that with every topic, it starts with the why before you get to the what and the how. And I spent my first couple meetings talking about why it mattered to me to see the end of tipping. And it's for many of the reasons that the two of you have just spoken about. Don't get me started again, because we've already talked about this.
Yeah, we have more questions to ask.
But once I spent my first couple chapters talking about why it mattered, and then said, and guess what, guys? You're going to tell us how to do this in a way that works for you. Then you started to get people invested. And I'll take it one step further, because as an employer, you cannot, Donald Trump is the talk of the town because he's getting a whopping 38% of the Republican vote, okay? We can't win this with anything less than 90% of our employees vote.
The employees need to be on
can't.
board to make it work.
They can't. And so we have had one-on-one talks with every employee at the businesses where this is implemented, not yet with all the other employees. And we've basically said, and we take snap polls every week, mobile, which is, I get it and I'm in. I don't quite get it, tell me more. I get it and I'm not in. And we watch those stats every single week. And on the one-on-one talks with people, we basically say, look, we're going to need everybody to try to help this. If you're someone who already knows that there's just no way this is going to work for you, that's cool. That doesn't make you wrong. But why don't you let us help you get a job somewhere else, either in one of our restaurants that's not going to be rolling this out, for 8 or 9 months, or we can help you get a job. We know every other colleague in the city practically. And it's not USHG, love it or leave it. It's basically, this is happening here. You guys helped us figure out how to do it. And if you know this isn't going to work for you, life's too short. Don't be here and be miserable.
All right. Question from our Twitter friends, from Salt and Straw, a great ice cream place in Portland. This is kind of a timely question. POTUS, President of the United States, noted the importance of his first job as a teenager in an ice cream shop. How do your restaurants think about providing first jobs?
Well, the first thing is, I've got to say, I love Salt and Straw. In fact, when I'm in LA this weekend, I'm going to go to Salt and Straw, so great to get a question from those guys. I think it's hugely, hugely important, and it's not just that the service industry, we have a really, really low bar of entry, which is awesome.
You at a restaurant like Gramercy, do you hire first-time people? You are a very high caliber at a lot of these restaurants.
Yes, so we'll hire first-time people like crazy if they've got a hospitality heart. Mm-hmm. So you don't need training to be a code checker, to be a telephone reservationist. You really don't even need.
We're looking for good people.
We're looking for people whose greatest pleasure is making other people happy. You can't enter Gramercy Tavern as a line cook without quite a bit of experience, but there are other jobs. I had them myself, opening oysters, peeling onions, plucking feathers from birds. I had that job in Bordeaux at a certain point. But anyway, we have a very, very low bar of entry, which is you should have the emotional skills. But then, unfortunately, what our industry does is it keeps that bar low. It keeps that bar low, and that's what we're trying to break. And so what we look at more than just did you get the job is, did we provide you a stepping stone?
Can you work your way up?
And the story that we haven't fully told yet about hospitality included is that that's $7.50 for a waiter, or that $11, $12, $13, $14 for a cook comes with a whole stepping stone that tells you, here's what you have to learn, here's what you have to master to get to the next level up. There's a pathway up, and I think pathway up is even more important than the starting price.
Question. All the way back there. You right there. Yes, you with the blonde hair. Yeah, we got someone in the back.
I just actually have a comment. I work for a public library system just north of Denver in Adams County, and setting the table has been a huge inspiration. Our entire staff.
Setting the table, Danny's book.
We train our staff on hospitality, so the comment earlier about the impact that you have on other industries, we feel it. So thank you for the inspiration.
Very
Can
cool.
you see my goosebumps?
Yeah, another question. Who's got a question? Over here. Yes, sir, right there.
Real quick, could you add any specifics as to why you chose not to do a service charge and increase the menu prices? You mentioned a little bit that there was some disadvantages to the service charge.
Right. The service charge has been, in some cases, deemed to be illegal.
You were saying keep the prices the same, but just a mandatory 20% service charge.
Yeah, if we could have done that legally, we probably would have, because it would have allowed our menu prices to remain apparently competitive with everybody. We would eliminate tipping, right? And you would get, as a consumer, say, I still get to take that other thing out of this other pocket, so it doesn't really look like they got more expensive. But we have been told by the Department of Consumer Affairs that the minute you guys do that, we're going to hold you up as an example for everybody.
Who's got another question in the back?
Pardon me?
Yeah.
And it's different in every state.
Sorry, we're doing the back. Yes, you in the black right there with the black. Yes, go ahead.
I know you have kind of catering side to the business. How is this policy going to be impacting, or will it be impacting?
How will this impact Danny's catering business at Union Square Hospitality Group? Good question. Will it?
Yes and no. I mean, mostly when somebody takes a catered event, like we'll be doing the Robin Hood event for 5,000 people.
That's a big charity group in New York
It's like
City
the
that
Super Bowl.
raises $1 gazillion.
And people don't tend to tip at those events anyway. So it's basically, we have to be in compliance and pay people. But the good news is that tipping is not something that you typically see at catered events.
Yes, sir, right there.
I guess just to follow up on that, I guess when people are paying for catered events, they're paying in, I guess, they're paying for catering, they're paying for that staff gratuity usually.
When you're paying for a catering event, you're paying for the staff, you're paying for the food, you're paying for the whole kit and caboodle.
Right, and we are endeavoring to actually simplify that. The more line items we can take out and just say, here's what it costs.
Period.
People in the catering world traditionally do want to see a breakout. If it cost me $10,000 to do this event, how much of that was for food? How much of that was for rentals? That's a big thing. How much was for the tent? How much was for the labor? They like to see that, but we're trying to get to the point where there's one price. And can I just say something? This is important. As someone who believes that hospitality, not service, but hospitality, the way we make you feel, is what drives your decision to return to a place. What we try to do with our team is to say, even if the bill that you get is itemized, let's say you go to Shake Shack, and you got a milkshake and fries and a burger, and it equals $13 or whatever, $14, we try to teach our staff even there to say the $14 wasn't for all those items. You need to pretend all those items were free, and what the person paid $14 for was how you made them feel. And
The experience.
And that's why we call this hospitality included.
A couple more questions. You right there, yes.
Jay, I own a restaurant here called Cilantro, and I run a fast casual restaurant, and tip is a big part of how I'm able to retain 35 to 40 hours with my servers and provide a high quality service. I'm interested in your concept. If I were to get on board with your concept, I'm now competing against restaurants that are not doing this and attracting my employee to work for them. What do you suggest that where do I look into to get on your program?
Yeah.
And that, I mean, it's a challenging part is that it's so hard to get on your program with fast casual restaurant.
Yeah, so fast casual restaurant, small business owner wants to get involved. And you must hear this from a lot of people like, Danny, I want to get involved. Do you have a helpline now for other restaurateurs? Seriously, like
We
you must
actually
get this
do.
a lot. Like, and what is your advice to them at a place like at a very different cost level and fast casual compared to a formal sit-down restaurant, you know?
Well, remember what I said is that the inspiration for me to finally bite the bullet and do this in full service was our success at doing it at Shake Shack. So Shake Shack, unlike fast food that pays minimum wage and where that whole industry is fighting having to pay more than minimum wage, even though that keeps an entire group of Americans at a point where they can't even, go above the poverty line. Shake Shack has been paying well above the minimum wage for quite some time. We're now paying over $12 an hour in 5 different states with Shake Shack. As a matter of fact, the president and vice president came to Shake Shack in Washington to herald them for making that choice. And I'm going to just tell you, it is a big leap of faith. It's a big leap of faith to say, how can we remain, it's the same thing that you were asking me about, Adam, with respect to a full-service restaurant. How do you tell an investor, and in the case of Shake Shack, it's a public company, how do you tell Wall Street, we believe we're going to make more money by having a higher labor cost? There's a lot of people.
They're very understanding. They're easy to
Oh
deal
my
with.
gosh, they're so understanding of that. And I just believe that you get better employees who want to stay longer, and better employees who want to stay longer brings you a much higher revenue because you have happier guests.
I've been to another burger place I'm not going to mention in New York City, similar to Shake Shack, and I walk in and the employees just look so beaten down and sad, and it's depressing. And I'm like, I can't go here anymore because it's not that the burger's bad, but it's just an unpleasant experience, and that makes a difference. All right, last question. Who's got one? Way in the back there. Yes, over there.
Thanks for coming. If Bob Gibson is not the best pitcher in the modern era, who is?
Sandy Koufax, obviously, but only for like 4 years. I don't know. You got to. Wow, that's the toughest question of the day.
That is, I don't know. I mean, the best one I ever saw was Steve Carlton, lefty.
There you go. All right, well, guys, thank you so much for coming out. Danny Myers, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Adam. Thank you. You guys are great. Thank you, Danny.
You ain't so bad yourself.
See you guys.